If you're a parent, or honestly, anyone who spends time around children,
Uh-huh.
I bet this question pops into your head pretty often. Why on earth do my kids behave the way they do?
Yeah, absolutely. It's universal.
Yeah, and we're talking about those really common frustrations, kids not listening or getting totally absorbed in screens, or those spectacular tantrums that just seem to come out of nowhere.
Right, the floor tantrums.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or that defiance that feels so intentional, it just makes you want to, tear your hair out.
It's really stressful, and it often leaves parents feeling like, am I failing here, That guilt.
That sense of guilt, yeah. And I think what's really key, what you're saying, is how we often jump to thinking that a child's negative behavior is like a deliberate choice, willful.
That's the default, isn't it? And our mission today is really to challenge that assumption. We want to dig deeper, go beyond just the surface actions.
Right.
And explore the profound psychological and even biological reasons why kids act the way they do.
That's exactly what we're aiming for. So for this deep dive, we've looked at a really interesting mix of sources. Everything from basic child psychology principles to insights from a veteran therapist, perspectives from board-certified behavior analysts,
BCBAs.
and a child psychologist too. The idea is to give you, the listener, a kind of shortcut to being really well-informed.
Offering some surprising facts, maybe, and definitely some actionable insights.
Yeah, so you can figure out what's most important from all this different material.
Okay, so let's start digging into that idea of willfulness, because that's where a lot of the frustration comes from, right?
Definitely.
One therapist we looked at, she uses this really powerful analogy. She says, look, if a child has diabetes,
Okay.
parents usually react with tons of kindness, compassion. Why?
Because it's obviously not their fault. It's
Yeah.
outside their control. They didn't choose to be sick.
Exactly. You'd never punish a child for having diabetes. It makes perfect sense.
So where's the disconnect then? Why do we react so differently, often with anger or punishment, when a child, say, throws a toy and breaks it?
Because we see that as deliberate.
Right. But what if? What if that destructive behavior or even aggression, what if it also comes from something outside their conscious control? Like a brain malfunction, as the therapist put it, or some unconscious driver.
Precisely. And think about how this connects to us as adults. It's actually very similar.
How so?
Well, imagine you order a hamburger, right? And the waiter brings you a cheeseburger instead.
Okay. Happens all the time.
Your reaction, whether you're cool about it or you get angry, it depends entirely on how you interpret why it happened.
Ah, right. Do I think it was just an honest mistake because they're busy? Or do I think this waiter is deliberately ignoring me or messing with me?
Exactly. Your reaction flows from what you believe about the situation.
And kids are the same way. Their reactions are driven by what they believe is going on.
Yes, and often, surprisingly, it's influenced less by the immediate thing that happened and more by their sort of general understanding of life and people that they've built up.
So what this really gets at is that behavior, most of the time anyway, it isn't random.
It might look random or even malicious sometimes.
Yeah, but even the most frustrating stuff kids do, it's almost always driven by forces that are, completely outside their conscious control.
And that leads us to a really critical point. Let's say a child starts acting out in a certain way. Maybe they start wetting the bed again after being dry.
Okay.
If that behavior is actually a symptom of something deeper, like an unresolved fear, maybe from something really serious like past abuse,
Oh, wow.
then just stopping the bedwetting, say, with punishment or an alarm, that can be incredibly counterproductive.
Why is that?
Because the behavior in that case is like a diagnostic tool. It's telling you something's wrong.
Right.
If you just shut down that symptom without dealing with the root cause, the fear, the child is basically forced to express that fear in other ways.
And potentially more dangerous ways.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Nonverbal ways like maybe starting fires, hitting other kids, destroying things. It's far, far better to understand the underlying cause and address that. Then the behavior, the symptom, can lessen naturally as the need for it disappears.
That completely reframes how we should look at a child's actions, not just as good or bad choices, but as, clues. Diagnostic tools?
Exactly.
Clues.
So what are they trying to tell us then? What are the messages behind the behaviors? Which brings us to, I think, our next really fundamental idea. Behavior is communication.
Absolutely fundamental. Children, especially the really young ones, they're born without the ability to clearly say, hey, I need this, or I feel scared, or my tummy hurts.
Right, they can't articulate complex stuff.
No. And even toddlers, their language is exploding, but it's still often much easier and faster for them to communicate through actions. Crying, yelling, hitting, tantrums.
Just because it's easier. Well, partly because it's easier, and partly because, frankly, those methods have worked for them before. They got a reaction, they got a need met.
Okay.
And this is especially true if a child has any kind of language delay. They have to use behaviors to communicate what they can't yet say with words.
So, okay, when a child is acting out, what are some of those immediate messages they might be sending? What are the common reasons?
Well, it could be any number of things, really. They might just be tired. Or hungry. Hangry is real.
Oh, definitely.
Scared, anxious, sad, frustrated, mad. The whole range of feelings.
Or maybe reacting to a change, like a disruption in their routine.
Absolutely. Change is hard for kids. Or it could be sensory stuff, loud noises bothering them, or scratchy clothes driving them nuts.
Okay.
Or especially with toddlers, maybe around 18 months or so, it could simply be them testing their independence, pushing boundaries, which is totally normal, by the way, a healthy developmental stage.
Right, they're figuring out they're separate people.
Exactly. Now, board-certified behavior analysts, the BCBAs, they take this further. They identify 4 specific functions of behavior.
Functions, meaning like the purpose the behavior serves for the child.
Precisely. The deeper reasons why a behavior keeps happening, why it's being maintained or reinforced, it's the why behind the what.
Okay, what are they?
So first is attention. The child acts out to get attention from someone.
And that can be positive attention, like wanting a hug.
Yep. Or it can be what we'd see as negative attention, like whining until a parent gets concerned, or throwing a toy specifically to make you yell at them.
Wait, they want you to yell at them.
Well, the key is that any attention, positive or negative, can reinforce the behavior. The yelling still means you paid attention to them.
Wow, okay. What's the second function?
Second is escape. The child behaves a certain way to avoid or end something they don't want to do.
Like throwing toys to get out of cleaning up.
Classic example, exactly. Third is access to a tangible item.
Tangible meaning something real they can touch or have.
Right. This is when they want to get something specific. The tantrum in the grocery store aisle to get that candy bar or toy.
Uh-huh, we've all seen that.
And the fourth one is a bit different. Desirable sensory input. Sometimes it's called automatic reinforcement.
Sensory input.
Yeah, this is when the behavior itself provides some kind of comforting sensory feeling, or it just, it feels good to do it.
Can you give an example?
Think about self-stimulatory behaviors like rocking back and forth or hand flapping. These are common, for instance, in individuals with autism.
Okay.
It's similar to how, if your throat tickles, you cough. The coughing itself provides relief. It's automatic.
Got it. Attention, escape, access, and sensory.
Those are the 4 main functions BCBAs look for.
And what's really crucial here, going back to that bedwetting example, is that just trying to stop a behavior without figuring out its function, its underlying motivation, that can really backfire.
It absolutely can. If the behavior is how a child is communicating a deep need or fear, and you just take away that communication channel without addressing the actual problem.
They're going to find another way to express it.
Exactly. And sometimes those other ways are much more concerning. The behavior itself is telling you something vital about their internal world. It's a diagnostic tool.
It really drives home how complex this is. There's so much more going on than just what we see on the surface.
Which brings us to an even deeper layer, really, the foundational factors that profoundly shape a child's brain and personality development.
Okay, foundational factors. What are we talking about?
We're talking about how a child comes to think about life, about their place in the world, about whether other people can be trusted. There are 3 really major components here.
What are they?
Genetics, the in-uterine experience, and the first 2 years of life.
Okay, let's break those down.
Yep.
Starting with genetics. I mean, obviously, genetics determine things like hair color, maybe athletic talent, or musical ability.
Right, the obvious physical stuff, and even IQ to a large extent. But the sources we looked at show it goes much, much deeper.
How so?
Genetics significantly affect things like neurotransmitter levels in the brain, the actual wiring for mood and thought processes.
Wow. So personality traits.
Yeah, things like shyness versus extroversion, leadership tendencies, how vulnerable someone is to stress, imagination. obsessive behaviors,
Addictions, anxiety.
susceptibility to addictions, anxiety levels, aggression, general temperament, even risk for mental illness, mood disorders, resilience, emotionality.
Mm.
They're all strongly linked to genetic predispositions.
That's huge.
It is. For instance, parents who are naturally more angry or anxious tend to have higher levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, in their systems.
Okay.
And they can actually pass that predisposition on to their children, making them more prone to anger or anxiety themselves.
And it's not just one way, right? It interacts.
Absolutely. It's dynamic. A child's genetic temperament, maybe they're a really easygoing baby, versus a very anxious, fussy infant that directly influences how parents react to them.
Which then influences the child.
And back and forth, it's a cycle.
This must have particular implications for kids in, say, adoption or foster care.
Huge complexities there. For example, birth parents who place children for adoption might, statistically, have higher rates of certain genetic predispositions, maybe issues with cause and effect thinking or delaying gratification.
And those traits might then show up in the adopted child, even with great parenting.
It's possible, yes. And for kids entering foster care, often due to abuse or neglect, their birth parents may have significant thought or mood disorders, maybe an inability to stay rational or emotionally stable.
So the child inherits those tendencies.
They can inherit the predispositions, and then you get this potential mismatch. One expert we read, Dr. Foster Cline, put it very bluntly, maybe a bit humorously, but pointedly.
What did he say?
He said, "We have pit bulls being adopted by collies," meaning you have kids with certain intense, genetically influenced temperaments being placed with families who have very different, perhaps gentler makeups. It can be a real challenge.
That's quite an image. Okay, so genetics is a massive piece. What about the second one, the in-uterine experience?
Right. This is incredibly powerful and maybe something people don't think about as much. The fetus, the unborn child, isn't just a passive blob of cells.
It's learning, feeling.
Yes, learning to feel, learning to think in rudimentary ways, and it's exquisitely sensitive to the mother's environment, both internal and external.
So like the mother's stress levels affect the baby.
Profoundly. There's this really eye-opening study by Dr. Mark Lieberman on mothers who smoke during pregnancy.
Okay, what did they find?
Well, not only did the fetus actually seem to try and hold its breath, kind of scrunching up when the mother lit a cigarette,
Wow.
but it also became agitated, heart rate shot up, posture got constricted every single time the mother thought about smoking. Just the thought.
How is that possible?
Because her thought triggered a release of cortisol, the stress hormone, which flooded the baby's system through the placenta.
Oh my gosh, so the baby's experiencing the mother's stress response.
Repeatedly. And this constant cycle creates this deep-seated conditioned anxiety. It actually wires the baby's developing brain to be sort of comfortable or at least familiar with a higher level of anxiety and arousal.
So anxiety becomes their baseline, their comfort zone.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
Which is disturbing. And this can lead, down the road, to a child who almost seeks out conflict or chaos.
Why?
Because creating that drama gives them that familiar cortisol rush, and paradoxically, it makes them feel better, or at least normal.
That's fascinating and kind of scary.
It shows how deep these influences go. There's another really powerful case study.
Tell me.
It was about a 4-year-old boy. His mother, during the pregnancy, had felt prolonged anger and regret about being pregnant. Really didn't want the baby.
Oh, that's tough.
And from the moment he was born, this child showed deep mistrust and fear. He was non-compliant, defiant, avoided touch, avoided eye contact.
Just from her feelings during pregnancy.
The interpretation was that her intense negative emotions created a kind of in utero trauma for him. It illustrates how even stress that might seem less dramatic to an outsider, like the mother having an unstable mood or lacking support or even just having a poor diet,
Right.
all of that can profoundly impact the baby's brain development and emotional well-being. You see it leading to colicky infants, difficult toddlers, increased aggression later on.
And the earlier it happens.
The younger the age the trauma occurs, generally, the deeper and more pervasive its impact.
Okay. Genetics. In utero. What's a third foundational piece?
The first 2 years of life. This is a period of absolutely explosive brain growth.
So the pathways that were maybe laid down by genetics and the womb experience, they get solidified here.
Exactly. They become more entrenched. And during this time, the quality of the interactions, especially between the primary caregiver, usually the mother, and the child, is just paramount.
This is where attachment comes in, right?
Precisely. Let's talk about a healthy attachment or trust cycle. An infant has a need. They're hungry, they're scared, they're uncomfortable, they cry. Crying releases cortisol, that stress hormone.
Right.
In a healthy cycle, the mother or primary caregiver predictably responds. She comes, she provides soothing actions, maybe touch, eye contact, smiles, food, gentle movement, rocking.
Things that calm the baby down.
Yes, and those soothing actions release serotonin and other feel-good neurochemicals in the baby's brain.
So what does the baby learn from that?
They learn, okay, when I have a need, someone comes, my needs get met, I am valued. The world is basically a safe place. It builds fundamental trust.
Makes sense. So what does the unhealthy cycle look like?
Well, contrast that. An infant cries, expressing a need, releasing cortisol, and maybe no one comes.
Oh.
Or maybe sometimes someone comes, but other times they don't. Or maybe the response they get is angry or rough or unpredictable.
So the baby doesn't get soothed. The cortisol stays high.
Right. Or the soothing is inconsistent.
Hmm.
So what does that baby learn?
That the world isn't safe. That
Yeah.
their needs might not get met.
Exactly. They learn the world isn't reliable. Maybe it's even dangerous. They learn they can't count on others, so they have to count on themselves. They essentially have to self-parent for survival.
And that causes problems later on.
It creates a huge challenge for future caregivers, even loving adoptive parents or foster parents, because that child has learned deep in their core that they must be in control to survive.
So they resist letting the new caregiver take care of them?
They can resist giving up that control, even in a really loving, safe environment, because their early experience wired them for self-reliance above all else. It's a survival mechanism that's hard to turn off.
Wow. These deep roots, genetics, the womb, the first 2 years, they really do explain so much about why kids might struggle later.
They really lay the foundation for how a child approaches the world.
So, okay, knowing all this, what does it mean for us as parents or caregivers trying to build connections and maybe even heal some of those early hurts?
Well, it shifts how we think about love. It's not just this vague emotion we feel. From a biological perspective, love, or at least the feeling of connection and safety, is the result of specific actions. Actions that trigger the release of pleasure-causing endorphins in the child's brain.
So doing certain things actually creates positive brain chemistry.
Yes, and that positive chemistry gets associated with you, the parent.
That's a crucial distinction. Okay, so what are these actions? What actually builds that connection on a biological level?
Well, think about the basic elements of human connection, even like flirtation or courtship between adults. There are these fundamental biological cues that build trust and affection.
Okay.
These same elements work powerfully with children. They're the things that flood their brains with those good endorphins and create that deep, positive association with the parent. There are 5 key ones.
5 keys. Let's hear them.
Okay, first, reciprocal eye contact.
The window to the soul.
Exactly. Real connection happens through the eyes. Now, for kids who've experienced trauma, direct eye contact can be threatening.
Right, they might avoid it.
So you have to be playful and deliberate. One great technique is playing peekaboo with M&Ms.
How does that work?
Simple. You hold an M&M near your eye. When the child makes eye contact, even for a split second, you pop the M&M directly from your hand into their mouth.
So eye contact immediately equals a pleasant taste.
Sweet food, pleasure. It associates looking at you with something good. Okay, second key, touch.
Skin is the largest organ.
It is. And positive, non-sexual, physical contact stroking, massage, hugs, it just floods people with good feelings. It can really tame children, make them more receptive.
What kind of touch are we talking about?
Lots of simple things. Brushing their hair, quick hugs throughout the day, light tickles, maybe a little neck rub or back rub, foot massages,
Helping them get dressed?
tying their shoes.
Yes. Or playing little games like this little piggy went to market, patty cake, wheelbarrow races, thumb wrestling, even face painting. The key is light, frequent, positive touch.
Okay. Eye contact, touch. What's number 3?
Sweet food.
You mentioned the M&Ms. Right. And think about it. Breast milk and formula are sweet. Sugar naturally arouses goodwill and positive feelings.
Not carrots on Valentine's Day, as one source put it.
Exactly. That sweet taste creates a positive feeling, which then gets transferred or associated with the parent providing the treat.
Okay. Number 4.
Movement, especially rhythmic movement.
Like rocking a baby.
Precisely. Stimulating those tiny hairs in the inner ear through movement can cause a kind of pleasurable shiver or feeling.
Is that why amusement parks are fun?
Yeah.
Or even extreme sports for adults?
That's part of the appeal, absolutely, that vestibular stimulation.
Interesting. Okay. Eye contact, touch, sweet food, movement. What's the 5th one?
The simplest one, maybe? Smiling.
Just smiling.
Just smiling. The physical act of lifting the corners of your mouth actually lifts your own spirits, but it also powerfully engages others.
It signals safety,
Yep.
friendliness.
Yes, smiling right into a child's face, it kind of lights them up. It's like a nonverbal contract saying, I'm friendly, I'm safe, I like you.
So eye contact, touch, sweet food, movement, and smiling.
Those are the 5 core elements.
So basically, any activity you do with your child that involves these things, especially if it's fun and on your terms, that's going to build connection.
Absolutely. Think about swinging them around, playing horsey, playing tag, splashing in the water, wrestling playfully, even just dressing a child in a silly way while laughing together.
You mentioned theraplay earlier.
Yes, theraplay is a specific type of therapy that uses exactly these kinds of playful, engaging, structured interactions involving touch, eye contact, and shared fun to build attachment and heal trauma. It's very effective.
And this is especially important for kids who are scared or angry.
Critically important, because for those kids, just telling them, you're safe now or I love you, it often doesn't get through. Their past experiences contradict your words.
Words aren't enough.
No, you have to act it out. You have to show them through these joyous yet intrusive, as one therapist puts it, interactions. Intrusive meaning you gently persist even if they initially resist the connection.
You have to playfully penetrate their defenses to heal those injured hearts.
That's the idea. And it's important to have realistic expectations about timeframes. This isn't an overnight fix.
Right. What's realistic?
The general guideline is maybe 1 month of this focused connection work for every year of the child's life, if the trauma was less severe.
And for more severe trauma.
Maybe closer to 2 months for every year of life. We're not just aiming for the child to act better superficially.
We're trying to actually change how their brain operates, heal those scarred neural pathways.
Exactly. It's about deep, lasting change in their internal state, not just compliance.
That's such a helpful way to frame it. Okay, so let's bring it back to the practical. When your child is acting out, what are the key things parents can do in that moment, or maybe right after?
There are 3 really key actions you can focus on.
Okay, number 1.
First, understand the underlying need. Always, always ask yourself, what is my child really trying to tell me with this behavior?
Look beyond the action to the feeling or the need driving it.
Right. Are they tired, hungry, anxious, overwhelmed? Are they seeking attention, trying to escape something? What's the function?
Okay. Understand the need. What's second?
Second, praise and reinforce appropriate behavior. This is huge. We often fall into the trap of only paying attention when kids act out.
The negative attention cycle we talked about.
Exactly. You have to consciously break that cycle. Actively catch your child being good. Notice when they're playing calmly, using good manners, sharing.
And give them attention then, before they act out.
Yes. Offer specific praise. Wow, great manners using your fork. Or, I love how calmly you're playing with your blocks. As one expert beautifully put it, when children feel better, they behave better. Positive reinforcement works.
Makes sense. Understand the need, praise the positive.
Yeah.
What's the third key action?
Third, be consistent. Kids need predictability. Clear, consistent limits and boundaries actually help them feel safe and secure.
Why is that?
Because they know what to expect. It reduces their anxiety and their need to constantly test the limits to figure out where the lines are.
So inconsistency actually encourages testing, like sometimes giving in to the extra bedtime story and sometimes not.
Precisely. If the boundary is fuzzy or changes all the time, the child has to keep pushing to see where it is today. Consistency creates security.
Understand, praise, be consistent. That's clear.
And there's another layer to this, something a child psychologist we read really emphasized. It's about parental self-reflection.
Looking at ourselves.
Yeah. Instead of only blaming the child for doing wrong things, parents need to look at the environment they are creating.
What do you mean?
Well, what does the child see day to day? Do they see parents who are generally happy, experiencing joy, celebrating life?
Right.
Or do they see parents who are constantly busy, stressed, anxious, miserable, irritated, angry?
And that affects the child's behavior.
Absolutely. Children soak that up. They often experience confusion first. Why is mom, dad always upset? And that confusion can then manifest as negative behavior.
That's a really powerful point. It puts the onus back on us.
It does. As parents, we generally have more knowledge, more accountability, more responsibility in the relationship. The call is to kind of go slow.
Slow down before reacting.
Yes. Go slow in accusing or blaming or just venting frustration at the child. And instead, try to focus on understanding, on acceptance, and on showing love through those actions we talked about.
Understanding, acceptance, and love in action.
That's the goal.
Okay, one last crucial thing. When should parents seek professional help? When is it beyond typical kid behavior?
That's a great question. There are definitely signs to watch for. If your child's behavior seems really out of character for them, or if the challenging behaviors are happening much more frequently than they used to, or if the intensity is really high, the tantrums are off the charts, uncontrollable.
Wow.
If it takes them a really long time to calm down afterwards, much longer than a typical tantrum fade out.
Right.
And critically, if the behavior starts interfering with daily life, if it's causing problems at school or making social outings impossible or really disrupting family time and harmony.
If it's impacting overall functioning.
Yes. If you see those signs, don't hesitate to consult with a pediatrician, a child psychologist, a therapist, or a BCBA. Getting professional support can make a world of difference.
Yeah, that's really helpful guidance. So, wrapping this all up, it feels like we've taken a journey today. We've shifted perspective pretty profoundly, haven't we?
I think so. Moving away from seeing challenging behaviors as just willful defiance.
Right, as bad choices.
And towards understanding them as these complex outputs. Outputs of a child's thinking, their internal state, which is so deeply shaped by those foundational factors. Genetics, their time in the womb, and those crucial first couple of years.
And hopefully you, our listener, now feel you have a deeper grasp of the why behind your child's actions.
And not just the why, but also some practical, biologically informed tools. Ways to foster connection, ways to potentially heal some of those underlying issues.
Yeah, moving beyond just quick fixes or surface-level compliance.
Towards actually helping to change a child's internal state for the better.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening to ponder on. Considering this incredible impact of love as action, those 5 elements on a child's brain and their emotional well-being, what's maybe just one playful, joyous, deliberate interaction rooted in eye contact or touch or movement? Maybe a sweet treat, just one thing you can commit to injecting into your day today or tomorrow.
Not to get something done, not to teach a lesson.
No, purely to build that connection, purely to reinforce on that deep biological level that their world is fundamentally a safe and caring place.
That's a wonderful takeaway. We really hope these insights bring more understanding, more connection, and honestly, more joy into your family life.
Scan the QR code to download our app, practice maths, science, English, and more